Hi Gordon. Today we're going to show you how to change the timing chain on a 5-cylinder 300D turbo engine. It's really actually the same on a 240D. The process is the same. What happens is that the timing chain over time wears out. It gets long, it stretches. And when it stretches, it goofs up the timing between the valves in the crankshaft and the injection pump, and it makes the engine real sluggish and slow to perform. And my friend at the Mercedes dealer said they typically replace them at 100,000 miles routinely. They just replace the timing chain. We'll show you how to determine whether it's bad or not, but today our video is going to show you how to replace it. First, let's look at the tools we're going to need. We're going to need a couple of specialized tools. We'll start with just the standard tools. We've got to remove the valve cover in order to replace the timing chain. So we need just a regular 3/8 drive set of sockets and a speed handle and some extensions and ratchets. Those are real standard things. We also need, in the process of pulling that valve cover, we're going to have to disconnect some accelerator linkage, and so we need some screwdrivers and we need a needle nose pair of pliers. And then in addition, we got to take the glow plugs out. That's the easiest way to take the compression away from the cylinder. And so what we need is a deep socket for the glow plugs, and I just got a rack of deep sockets. And then we got an 8mm open end box end wrench combination that we're going to use to pull the wires on the glow plugs. And we're going to take the rack off. Actually, the rack is going to come before that. And so what we need is a 17mm. Actually, we're also going to need a 19mm because we're going to take the vacuum line off of there. And then what I have is a deep 27mm. That's going to be to rotate the engine, and a ratchet to go with it. I actually happen to have what's called a crow's foot. You don't need one of these, so don't worry about it. It's just convenient. It's a 17mm, and to remove the rack, we're going to use that. It's just convenient. So those are all the standard tools. In the special tools, the most critical special tool that you need is a compression tool that compresses the link. These links assemble, the new timing chain assembles with a link, and you actually crimp the ends, the tips of the link that joins the timing chain. And this special tool brads the ends of this joining link. So we need that. And of course we need the timing chain. And finally we need some kind of a tool. We could use a file, but I just got a little Dremel tool to saw the old link off of there. So to saw the unbraided link off, we use a little Dremel tool. So we'll show you how to change the timing chain on a 300D here in a moment. Now the first thing we're going to do is take the air breather off. After we take the air breather off, we're going to take the valve cover off, which involves some disassembling some of those things there. And then we're going to take the glow plugs out. The only reason we take the glow plugs out is because it releases the compression, and so we can turn very easily the crank, which is what we need to do to turn that new timing chain on there. So the very first thing I do is release that clamp that holds the turbo 90 or 180 degree turn up there. So we pull this breather off, and then the valve cover. So it's all pretty straightforward to begin with. Okay, next we want to take some of this stuff off the valve cover. I just use a screwdriver to pop these little connectors off of there, typically. And actually, I think, as I recall, this one's easier right here. So if I take these two off, some of them, if they haven't been off in a while, can be stubborn. So I want to take these two off, and then from this connector, so that'll allow me to pull this off. Actually, what I need is also to pull this little this little assembly off of there, and of course I'm going to pull the valve cover, so the easiest thing I think is to pull that one, and we'll put that out of the way in a moment. But now we're going to take this piece of the assembly off. This whole assembly is just a 13 millimeter bolt, and there are 4 of them located so we need to pull those 4 bolts off the valve cover. Now as I get these 4 bolts off, this piece is just going to come off, and this piece also, and I just lay it aside like that, so that what I want is to take this valve cover off. But before I do that, I'm going to take the rack off, what's called a rack, which is this assembly of lines right here. Really don't have to take the rack off in order to change the timing chain. The problem is that you need to pull the glow plugs out so that you take away the compression of the engine. And I just find that it's so much easier just to pull that rack in order to get to those glow plugs. So that's the only reason I do that. And so we're going to pull that rack and then pull those glow plugs and pull this valve cover. So to pull that rack, what you need is a 17 millimeter. And in addition to that, it sometimes is very handy to use what I call a crow's foot, which is a way to change the extension of a socket assembly. So you see, if I want to loosen a nut like that, one way to do it is with this particular setup. And you can see that I can loosen those with a crow's foot very easily without breaking my knuckles so much. But I don't need that. I'll show you that if you don't have a crow's foot, you can, if you have some patience, you can work in there with a standard open-end 17 millimeter wrench, and it will do the job. You just need some patience to get it in the right position. So we've got 10 17 millimeter nuts to loosen. One on each one of the injectors and one on each of the injection pump lines. And sometimes you have to loosen up these 8 millimeter bolts that are just little pins. There's a lot of vibration on these diesels, so they hold these rack lines tight with these things. So sometimes you got to loosen those too, and of course you got to disconnect some of the things that are attached in terms of some lines. So we'll do all of that and come back, but our objective is to get that rack off. You got to pull that vacuum line right there off, because when you're working on the side, and you'll break off those little nipples on the side. And the thing is an expensive line to replace. But anyway, I got these nuts loose. On this one I didn't have to loosen all those, but you can see that some of this stuff is sort of in the way. So there's an electrical connection right there to sense temperature. We're going to pull that off. We're going to have to cut that line right there because it's got a little tie wrap on it. We need to get that out of the way so we don't break it. I'm going to set that rack aside. And now our real objective was to get these glow plugs out of there, because what it does is it takes the compression out of the engine. So that's our next step. By the way, we're going to have to take that line off to get that thing. Now what I want to do is disconnect the throttle linkage to get it out of the way. All I have to do is get it back out like that. Now what I need is that thing off of there, because when the valve cover comes off, this piece needs to come. So you can see that on the SD it's a little different. Okay, so the SD is a little different. I'm going to have to take this pin off. The D and the SD have a little variation on this throttle linkage. I just need that out of my way because my objective is the valve cover. And now I have everything out of the way of the valve cover. I'm going to set that little pin aside. And now what I want is, I want the wires that connect each one of those glow plugs off of there, and they're 8mm. So each wire has to be removed, and it is an 8mm. Now that we've come back, we just take those 8mm off, and the wire disconnects, so you got a little nut on there. And that lets the engine breathe real easy, so you can turn it over. As we remove that timing chain, we need to rotate the engine. We don't want to be fighting the compression of the engine, so we got to relieve each one of those cylinders by taking the glow plug out of it. It's a lot easier. You could also, to do the same objective, you could take the injectors out of it, but if we take the injectors out, we're going to have to change all those return lines and everything, and that's just a real pain compared to the glow plugs. So, on my fourth wire here, that last one is in kind of an ugly place right by the oil filter back there. That's going to be the hardest ones. But I want to pull the glow plugs out. They're 12mm, and I tried and looked at a long socket, but it turns out that it looks like, because of the tight position that they're in, the 12mm box end is just as easy. So if I put a box end on those things, it appears that that's going to be the easiest route for me to get them all off of there. So you need to pull the glow plugs out, the 5 glow plugs out, and again, it's just straightforward. As soon as you get them loose, they screw out. They're finger tight only. They screw right out of there. We want to pull those glow plugs. We got those glow plugs all out of there. Now we're going to pull this valve cover, and there are 4 bolts that hold the valve cover on, 4 nuts attached to studs. One there on this side, and then on the other side you can see the indentation there and there. So they're real straightforward. Oh, and I forgot. Before I pull the valve cover off, just because it's so much easier, I usually take this thing off. It's the little motor control for the cruise control, and it's 3 10mm. So let's pull that off first. There are 3 10mm bolts that hold this little motor on there. You don't have to pull wires or anything. All you have to do is pull those 3 bolts, and I usually just leave them lying right where they are, just being careful not to, well, sometimes they come up with my socket, but my point is that you need this. You may not need it to get the valve cover off, but when you get it back on there, it's more convenient to have it off, because this little unit can be in the way. You just need to move it a little bit, just kind of out of the way. Just put it out of the way of the valve cover. And you see those 2 bolts came with it, so I'll set them aside. I'm going to continue with my loosening of the valve cover bolts. Valve cover nuts, I should say. I think I got them all loose. After you take those nuts off, there may or may not be washers. The guy before you may not have put washers back on it, but there's supposed to be 4 washers, so be careful if they're on there. This engine happens to not have them because whoever took it off didn't put them back on. But at any rate, once you get those off, this thing will come right up, kind of tilts to the side like that. Sometimes those lines get stuck. There's one return line that's actually plugged into that little thing right there. But that takes care of the valve cover. Let's set that aside. Now we have our timing chain exposed. So this is the thing we're going to replace. This is the thing that gets long and stretches out of shape. Inside the pulley, right there, about the depth of a deep socket, perfectly, 1/2 inch, 27mm, is a big bolt. and that's directly tied onto the crankshaft. Now what we want is to rotate it in a clockwise manner, and so I should have set up my ratchet to turn it that way in the first place. We don't want to turn it backwards. So what we want to do is turn that, and it should be fairly easy because we got no compression on the engine, and you see everything is turning around. Now Gordon, watch that intake lobe with your camera, and let's let that intake lobe push that valve down, and after it does that, let me know. So let's see. See that little notch right there? We'll rotate a little more, you can see it clearly. Over on the other side, if we go over here with the camera, this is the little raised indentation. Okay, and we need to align that mark with one on this pulley. That'll be the camshaft #1 top dead center mark.
Okay.
All right, we're coming up.
Almost there, just barely. A little bit.
Little bit.
Just a hair. Right there.
All right, now look at my mark on the crank. You know, it ought to also be right there. See that little silver mark where that post is sticking up?
Yeah, it's actually gone past it a little.
Has it?
Just,
okay.
Just a hair.
All right, I want it perfect just so people see.
Yeah, this one's better than that one, right? There's actually a peg poking up too.
Yes, and that's exactly where it is.
Right now.
Okay.
Now the peg's right in front of the mark.
Okay, so what we want to do is take one of those pins out of there. Take the pin out, and when we do, this piece comes off. We're going to put the new chain here. I can easier put that pin in there. Now, do it using this method, which is really a safer method, and that is what you do is you put 3 or 4 pair of vice grips, and so if the master link was right here, you would put vice grips on either side and turn it a little bit, and then if this was where the master link was, and so we had this chain flopped out, we would just take and move these down all one, okay, and then we would have the opportunity to turn it a little further. So that way we don't take any chances, and we keep that real loose chain real tight during the process, because you'll find out that if the chain is real sloppy, it's been our experience that you can't even turn it because the loose chain binds up. And so you got to keep the tensioner in there, which is contrary to what the book says, and do it by this method where you clamp it down. So you just keep moving your vice grips further and further to the left like that. That's all there is to it. Now, when you put the center link in, you put it in from the back side. So you push the link in through the back side, and then there's one little center piece that goes in there. between the two posts that stick through, and then lastly you put the last piece of the link on the outside, and you actually have to have this special tool, and you bury that little piece inside there, and then you put this tool like this, and then you put it down over the chain, and it fits perfectly over the chain, and then of course you just crimp it. And when you crimp it, it's a 13mm socket, and you just hold this tool and then you just crimp it down as far as it'll go. And what it does, of course, is it brads the pins on that chain. They don't make a master link for a diesel. You've got to use this crimping tool. It's available for rent in various places. Check our website to rent it, and other places, Performance Products, either way. Now you got to put it all back together, and the timing is all right. You just have to reassemble everything. And about the only thing that you need to be careful of in reassembly on this job, you got to get those glow plugs back in naturally, and you got to get the injection lines back on from the injection pump. And we'll splice in, because we've shown before how to clear the injection lines. You got to clear the air out on there, or it'll never start. So that's one piece that you have to do. It is simple enough, and Gordon will splice that piece onto this video. So I'll be in different clothes when we show you that. So what I always do is just lay that rack up there on it and tighten up the bottom ones, get them started, and get the top ones started too. So you need all 10 of them loosely started. You have to fiddle with it a little bit. And then I tighten the 5 on the bottom on the injection pump, leave the ones loose up on the injectors, and then turn the car over and evacuate the lines, get the air out of the lines. And once I get the air out of the lines, then I tighten them up. So first things first, get the thing started. So each one of these connections is loose. It's just finger tight. And what we're going to do is turn this engine over until we can get some fuel out of each one of those. You see it's trying to start almost. If you can see, I got a little fuel pushing out of each one of those lines. Now I'm ready to tighten them up, and it ought to crank right up.